So, just come back to my friend Mick. Mick was looking at some of my blog posts, and I had posted on how Krishnacharya was using kumbhaka in Yoga Makarana, his first book. And Mick suffers from a hereditary illness that causes him to have regular attacks throughout the year. And in some of these attacks, his joints will swell up and goes as far as sometimes to just bleed out. And he has to go to A&E, and they can't actually stitch him up because of it will just continue bleeding. This puts him into a condition where he can't do his Ashtanga practice, and he has to basically reduce his practice while he's healing. So while he was looking at some of my blog posts, he was looking at the Krishnacharya work on kumbhaka and how it's a slower practice anyway. And so he started trying to incorporate the kumbhaka into his practice. And he started to find that his healing was much quicker. And because he was going to the hospital all the time and getting constant blood tests, the hospital was also noticing a difference. So now that we had you here, we wanted to ask you about kumbhaka. We want to ask you if that makes sense to you as coming from microbiology, I think it was, your original
molecular biology.
Molecular biology and then physiotherapy.
Yeah.
So does it make sense to you that kumbhaka can have a healing effect, shall we say?
Yes, no, definitely. There's many benefits that can be attributed to various types of breath retention, kumbhaka, and of course there's several different ways you can do a kumbhaka, and each of them will have a different effect. You can hold the breath in, you can hold the breath out, or you could hold the breath partly in. You could also get a similar effect from kumbhaka by just not breathing very much at all. You could also get a similar physiological effect from kumbhaka by breathing very, very, very slowly. You know, very, very slow breathing would look to someone else like you're not breathing at all. And so all of these things have effects physiologically and physically as well.
When you say breathing very slowly, do you mean long, slow inhalations, or do you mean just breathing regularly but very softly?
You can do either. So if I had to do a graphical analysis, say this is time in this axis and this is amount of breath. If I go deep breath in, deep breath out, deep breath in, deep breath out, this is a lot of fluctuations in the breath. But if I do a kumbhaka, an inhalation retention, say, inhale, hold the breath, and my little fingers moving in a straight line, that's an inhalation retention. I could also do exhalation retention. Inhale, exhale, hold the breath out, and it's a straight line. Inhale, exhale, up and down. But I could simulate the effect of that straight line by just doing very little breath in, little breath out, little breath in, little breath out. And so from a distance, little breath in, little breath out would look like a straight line. And so physiologically, it has the same effect as kumbhaka. And in Sanskrit and yoga terms, that's actually what really is Kevala kumbhaka. It's what happens when you're meditating. When you feel like you're not breathing at all, but actually if you study it, there's just very little in-breath and out-breath.
Why does that have a similar effect of very large inhalation, very large exhalation?
Why does it have a similar effect? Well, it has a similar effect as holding the breath in or holding the breath out. Because holding the breath in and holding the breath out will build up carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is one of the main effectors of the physiological effects of kumbhaka. And so you'll also get high levels of carbon dioxide, not just from holding the breath in or holding the breath out, but by not breathing very much. And so when we meditate, we don't breathe very much. It's very little in-breath, very little out-breath. So because the air is not exchanging much, you actually start building up CO2. So physiologically, one of the best ways of getting the effects, the positive effects of carbon dioxide build up is by doing meditation. And you hear many people who have cured themselves of cancer by doing meditation. And on a physiological level, one could speculate that the increases in health from someone who, say, had cancer may be because of the increases in carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide is needed, necessary to be present for oxygen to be deposited into cells via the Bohr effect.
Yeah, can you explain the Bohr effect? Because I've tried reading it a few times and I don't really get it that well.
The Bohr effect very simply would say that if you have oxygen which is carried on hemoglobin, the red pigment in blood, and it's travelling through your blood, it might come to say your big toe and it'll say, I've got oxygen, does anyone here in the big toe want oxygen? And all the cells in the big toe will say, yes, I want oxygen. And before it releases its oxygen to the big toe cells, it will say, show me your carbon dioxide. And if the big toe cells have no carbon dioxide, then the oxyhemoglobin will not release its oxygen. It will just travel off somewhere else. You need local presence of carbon dioxide for oxyhemoglobin to be able to release its oxygen and make it accessible to cells. And this is the Bohr effect. So in high levels of carbon dioxide, there's a lot more deposition of oxygen into your cells. In low levels of carbon dioxide, you might get increased blood flow, but you might not get entry of oxygen into cells. When oxygen enters cells, you get much better healing, and also you get much more energy. So for example, a cell can run off glucose. Glucose is simple sugar, and if glucose is used as the fuel to be burnt for that particular cell, you'll get 2 molecules of ATP, the energy source of the cell, for every 1 glucose burnt. But if you burn glucose in the presence of oxygen, you get 38 molecules of ATP. So it's 19 times as much more energy can be generated in the presence of oxygen. Funnily enough, cancer cells don't function with this oxygen method. They don't work on the aerobic pathway. They only have anaerobic metabolism happening. So it's not to say that the presence of oxygen will kill cancer cells or the absence of oxygen causes cancer, but rather healthy cells will not do very well and cancer cells will do very well in low levels of oxygen. Whereas in high levels of oxygen, healthy cells do very well and cancer cells don't necessarily do much better than normal. So cancer sometimes is said to be helped if you can get more oxygen into the cells, and one of the ways of doing that is by putting it in a low carbon dioxide environment. And one of the ways of generating low carbon dioxide is using either kumbhaka or minimal breathing, which in Sanskrit terms is kevala kumbhaka, which is the type of breathing that happens when you sit in meditation. And on a graphical level, that's a little breath in, little breath out, little breath in, little breath out, which looks like a straight line. Same like if you inhaled, held the breath in, looks like a straight line. But to simulate a straight line also, you could do a very slow breath in. Like if I inhaled fast, line goes up like that. If I inhale slow, the line goes up slower still. But if I inhale and I take 1 minute to inhale, the line goes up so slowly that from a distance it looks like a parallel line. And so very slow inhales of say 1 minute for an inhalation would simulate kumbhaka on a physiological level.
That's interesting, because Krishnacharya is talking all the time about long, slow breathing.
That's what long, slow breathing is. And I think in the modern world, people imagine that in a common vinyasa class, people will say, deep breath in, take up your arms, deep, slow, breath out, take down your arms. And of course, that's only 3 seconds breathing in, 3 seconds breathing out. Whereas Krishnamacharya was talking much more about 1 minute of inhalation.
The slow pouring of oil.
That's right.
That's the rate of it, the speed of breathing.
Right. Yes. And they also talk about when the exhalation comes out, it should be so fine that you can't blow out a candle from a certain distance. And there's also the beautiful videos that Iyengar has put out where he's breathing with a microphone and you hear the sound of Ujjayi. And he inhales for 45 seconds, exhales for 55 seconds.
Stunning.
It's beautiful, yeah.
We're quite aware of benefits of using kumbhaka in pranayama. You've talked about in meditation, getting a similar effect by just breathing very shallow. In asana, Krishnamacharya is quite surprising when we look at Yoga in that he's using kumbhaka in asana. And while we've been here on the Yoga Rainbow Festival, we've been talking about using kumbhaka in asana. And we were talking about how we could, you said for example about getting oxygen or CO2 to the toe. And how did you put it? If there wasn't enough,
if there's not enough carbon dioxide there, you won't be able to transport the oxygen from oxyhemoglobin to the cells.
Okay.
So you need CO2, you need carbon dioxide.
So then we were talking about how we could, one of the interesting things about the Kumbhaka and Asana was that it seemed that there might be the possibility that you could direct your, the blood that you've affected with your Kumbhaka to different areas of the body.
Yeah.
So for example, if I'm doing a posture where a certain area is perhaps compressed,
Yeah.
and then when I release it, perhaps if I'm doing my vinyasa, the blood then could perhaps flow to that area. In Ramaswamy, he talks about it in the shoulder stand, say, where we would have the legs very relaxed, and then we were talking about this. And the idea seems to be to let the blood kind of drop away, and then when we straighten the legs and tense, we're then sending blood through.
Yep.
So it seemed to me that if we relax, the blood drains away slightly. We're doing the Kumbhaka, and then when we extend our legs, the new Kumbhaka CO2 infused blood will then fly to the area that we...
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. It does.
Why does that make sense?
Well, I've measured 10 different ways you can move blood through the body other than the heart. And one of them includes using the muscles of breathing, and another includes using the effect of carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide, when it builds up, not only helps the Bohr effect, but it also causes vasodilation to many of the blood vessels in the body. So for example, the blood vessels to the brain will get larger, more open, and allow greater entry of blood to the brain, also to the heart, and several other places in the body as well.
Is that why we do Jandara Bandha?
Yes, because otherwise you get too much transmission of energy back and forth to the head. Okay. So carbon dioxide can have this vasodilation effect. It also affects the bronchial tubes. It will make them vasodilate. It also affects pretty much every tube in the body. It makes the stomach dilate, the bladder wall dilate, stuff like this. So that's one effect that comes from breathing, especially from Kumbhaka, in terms of long Kumbhakas where the breath is held long enough to increase CO2, in whichever way you do that. But the other effect that pranayama can have on blood flow is that you can use the muscles of breathing to actually pull air in and out of you. For example, if I expand my chest, the expansion will cause a suction that pulls air into my nostrils. But if I close my nostrils, either with my fingers or with my glottis, and so I close the holes in my face and expand my chest as if I'm taking a breath into the chest but not, then you get Uddiyana Bandha. And so the use of the muscles of breathing will cause various increases and decreases in pressure in the body. And those increases and decreases in pressure will push and pull blood. So if I exhale fully, that's going to push blood away from my chest. That actually slows the entry of blood into the heart. If you inhale to the chest, that pulls blood toward the heart and it actually increases heart rate. And that's well recorded in medical texts. But then if you hold your breath, and while holding the breath in, you compress your chest, that's an even more powerful way of moving the breath, moving the blood through the body. And similarly, if you hold your breath out, and then you expand your chest like breathing in, but not, this is using bandha with Kumbhaka, that moves the blood a lot more.
So this would allow us to practice without increasing the heart rate?
It can give you control of your heart rate, certainly. But it also helps you move blood through the body at different ways. Plus, with the movement of blood through the body, there's also the possibility of taking increased or decreased amounts of carbon dioxide, which can help with the Bohr effect, and which can help with vasodilation, and also increased levels of oxygen and blood carrying oxygen as well. The effect of carbon dioxide is also going to affect the pH levels inside the blood as well. And pH levels are very significant in terms of the effect on things like stem cell production. So holding the breath can also affect how stem cells are produced and how well they're moved throughout the body. And stem cells, of course, can turn into any cells in the body. And so a lot of research in the world is being done nowadays to try and work out the best ways of harvesting stem cells and increasing endogenous production of stem cells.
Can you explain a little bit more about how the pH in the body is affected? I mean, you've talked several days.
Yes.
Where you've been talking about the pH increasing the alkaline and or decreasing, and how certain whether kumbakas can have an effect. You also talked about diet affecting that as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So how the kumbakas we're using, the diet we're using, all these factors can have an effect on
almost everything in the body. On everything, pH can affect almost everything in the body. The body will only work properly between a very narrow pH of pH 7.35 to 7.45. That's when you get the healthiest things happening. But the pH is affected by how you breathe, how long you breathe in for, how long you breathe out for, how many breaths per minute, what type of air you're breathing. It can also be affected by what you eat as well. So if you eat very acidic foods, that will make your blood acidic. If you eat alkaline foods, it will make your blood alkaline. If you breathe a lot of air per minute, that will make you very alkaline, because the more you breathe, the more you blow off carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide in blood or water becomes carbonic acid.
I think I remember reading in your book on anatomy and physiology.
Yes.
You were saying that how at the end of the practice, depending on your pH level, at the end of the practice you might feel famished and just want to just stuff your face, or you won't feel that hungry at all. So for example, after pranayama, generally you don't feel very hungry.
That's right.
But after practice, often people will just eat anything.
Yes. And they use the excuse that they've just had a workout, therefore they should be able to eat more. But if you do pranayama while you practice, if you don't breathe much while you practice, then you're not hungry. And so that would be coming as a result of creating significant levels of carbon dioxide while you're practicing, doing pranayama while you're practicing, or just not breathing much while you're practicing. And this CO2 will cause an increase in carbonic acid, which will lower your pH levels. And then instead of craving acidic foods, you'll be more craving alkaline foods or nothing. Whereas if you breathe a lot during your practice, which will blow off carbon dioxide, reduce your carbonic acid levels, increase your pH, you will feel unbalanced. Your pH will be increased, too alkaline, and if your pH is increased and you are too alkaline, the symptoms include sensitivity of the nerves. Your nerves might start to shake, you might start to feel emotional, you'll feel weak, you'll feel hypersensitive. Also the blood vessels to the brain will be constricted and you feel like you're dizzy and lightheaded. So the body will know we need acidity in our body now. And the quickest way to get acidity into your body will be to eat acidic foods. So a good stodgy meal, some bread, some
alkaline
rice.
food are like fruit and vegetables.
Alkaline food, fruit and vegetables, pretty much everything else, meat, fish, eggs, bread, rice, that's all going to be acidic in the body, and it will make you straight away feel grounded. And grounded means more blood goes to the brain, the nervous system calms down. But you can also become grounded by doing something like meditation, because meditation also causes CO2 to be built up because you're not breathing much in meditation. And so that CO2 build-up is one of the main reasons why we feel relaxed after doing meditation, because CO2 is built up.
So again, if we have an integrated practice where we're doing our asana, our pranayama, our meditation, we're coming out of our practice
feeling not hungry, feeling very grounded.
Fancying some fruit rather than a steak.
Yes, if you're going to eat anything, you're more likely to eat some fruit. And so you can also do pranayama in postures if you either do long, slow breathing, or you do meditative breathing, which is more like natural breathing postures, which is what Iyengar teaches, or if you do kumbhaka, like Krishnamacharya teaches. And of course the simplest kumbhaka is just pause at the end of the in-breath and pause at the end of the out-breath, and not change the muscles of inhalation or exhalation at all. But more complex pranayama would include bandha, like Krishnamacharya demonstrated in his videos, where at the end of the exhalation you can do a full Uddiyana bandha, Nauli, Nauliki, and at the end of the inhalation you would not just hold the breath in, but you could activate the muscles of chest exhalation, the muscles we use for forced exhalation from the chest, like when you force the air out of the chest, you can do this. So if I breathe in now, for example, my air is fully in my lungs, my chest is expanded. But if I hold the breath in, I can compress the chest. And that chest compression will increase the intrathoracic pressure. And that will actually push blood away from my chest, reduce the blood coming into my heart. And that can have a very powerful effect on the body.
This is like in Lalasana.
You could do it in Balasana as a Valsalva maneuver. When you do this in Western terms, it's called a Valsalva maneuver.
Yeah.
Yep. So a Valsalva maneuver has been studied extensively. You can Google it and read a lot and learn a lot about how people do this in yoga. Valsalva maneuver is when you take a full breath in, you hold the breath in, and make a false attempt at exhalation. And then there's another one called a Mueller maneuver, where you exhale fully, this is also a scientific medical term, where you exhale fully, hold the breath out, and make a false attempt at inhalation. Maybe I could demonstrate this.
Yeah.
No? So this is what could be called a Valsalva maneuver. I will inhale fully into my abdomen and into my chest, hold the breath in, and then I'm going to pretend to exhale from my abdomen and my chest. So this is... Okay, so this is the Valsalva maneuver. I'm going to inhale into my abdomen, which is like this, and I'm going to then inhale into my chest, which is this. I'm going to do both of them. And then I'm going to exhale to my abdomen, which is this is exhaling to my abdomen. This is exhaling to my chest. But I'm not going to actually exhale, I'm going to pretend to exhale. So to help you appreciate I'm pretending, I'm going to hold my nose. So, inhale. And then I release the air. So let me do it again, and you'll see that I can also expand or contract. So it looks like I'm breathing, but I'm not breathing. I'm activating my muscles of inhalation and exhalation while actually holding my breath in. And that act of trying to breathe out, having held the breath in, is called a Valsalva maneuver. It's very well studied. There's hundreds of papers about it, and it has many physiological effects. Many of them can be healing effects. There's also a few negative effects, such as when weightlifters do this, because weightlifters do exactly that. They pick up weights, you see them in the Olympics. Inhale, and they exhale once the weight is lifted. This Valsalva maneuver can help you increase strength. And you pointed out that Krishnamacharya has actually said to do this while doing the Lolasana. It's very usable, and people can actually, you actually see people all around the world doing this intuitively because they know it makes them feel stronger.
So by that you say Krishnamacharya when he does his jump throughs, jump back, he's doing it on a kumbhaka.
Yes, and that's what he wrote in Makaranda.
Yeah.
So that was a surprise to me he wrote that, because Patabi Joyce doesn't teach that.
No.
He teaches inhale. And you inhale diaphragmatically, and I'll come to that a bit later. But for the moment, that's what can be used to increase strength. But when weightlifters are studied to do this, their blood pressure increases from a normal blood pressure of 120 over 70 to a very intense blood pressure of 380 over 360, which to me says they're super yogis of sorts, but actually they could also burst a blood vessel in the brain very easily. So it's potentially very dangerous doing a Valsalva maneuver. Yeah. And so this is what could be called a Mueller maneuver. A Mueller maneuver is by definition, by the medical definition, a full exhalation and then a false attempt at inhalation. Okay? So this could be a Mueller maneuver. This is an inhalation to my chest. I could pretend to do that. So I exhale fully, hold the breath out, and instead of breathing in the chest, I pretend. So this is breathe in the chest, pretend. So the act of breathing in the chest, or pretending to breathe in the chest, is looks like Uddiyana Bandha, but it's not the Uddiyana Bandha that some people use. Many people say that Uddiyana Bandha has something to do with hardening the abdomen, but actually the Uddiyana Bandha that B.K.S. Iyengar describes in his book, that many yoga texts describe, is actually purely and simply an expansion of the chest, the same way you would breathe into the chest, but without breathing. But it is done without tightening the abdomen at all.
Okay, and the problem with tightening the abdomen is you're restricting the diaphragm.
Well, the problem with tightening the abdomen to do this would be that it wouldn't work very well. If someone tightens their abdomen and tries to expand the chest, it doesn't lift up as high because the rib cage is being pulled down. But it depends what muscles you tighten the abdomen with. I can tighten my abdomen at the same time. I can use my muscles of forced exhalation to tighten the abdomen while doing my muscles of chest inhalation. I can use my muscles of abdominal exhalation, and that's this. So then perhaps you could see there were two external oblique muscles coming on, and that indicates that I was using my external oblique in exactly the same way that I would use to make a forced abdominal exhalation. So that was activating my muscles of chest inhalation and my muscles of abdominal forced exhalation while holding the breath out. And that's a combination of a Valsalva and a Mueller maneuver at the same time, on exhalation retention. But a real Valsalva maneuver and a real Mueller maneuver are very hard to explain, because if I talk to a cardiologist and I say to them, what is a Valsalva maneuver? They'll give you the description I just gave. But if I say to them, what should I be trying to exhale with, my abdomen or my chest? They'll say, what do you mean? And I say, well, is this the Valsalva maneuver? In other words, am I trying to exhale with my chest or my abdomen or both? And they'll look at you in surprise, go, I didn't even know you could do that. And then of course the Mueller maneuver is a false attempt at inhalation. So this is an inhalation with the chest. This is an inhalation with the abdomen. And I'll say to the cardiologist, which type of Mueller maneuver do you want? Do you want a false inhale to the abdomen or the chest? Because this is a false chest inhalation. This is a false abdominal inhalation. And of course I could do both. One looks like Uddiyana Bandha, one looks like some very esoteric yoga, who knows what. But I could pretend to inhale to my abdomen and my chest at the same time. And that's actually very, very difficult.
And what would be the benefit of doing that? Why would we do that?
The chest muscles are going one way, the diaphragm's going the other way, and it creates a tremendous suction. You can get a similar effect by doing Nali. The effect that's more commonly, more easily taught is this one, which also creates an effect of this going up and this going down. This is this one. But that's using my rectus abdominis to push the abdomen outwards. What I did before was use my diaphragm to push the abdomen outwards. And that's very stressful, because when you expand the chest, that pulls the diaphragm up. When you breathe diaphragmatically, that pulls the chest down. So to do a complete breath for most people is very difficult. This is a complete breath. I inhaled into my abdomen, then into my chest. But most people, when they try that, do this. And once the chest starts expanding, the abdomen goes in. To actually inhale to the abdomen, keep it expanded, then inhale to the chest, that for most people is very, very difficult. And in fact, most people, if you ask them to breathe into the chest with the abdomen relaxed, 1 in 10 people can do it, 9 in 10 can't. Most people can only breathe in the chest with the abdomen tight, which is the very same way they would do it. By doing that, they also make themselves quite stressed.
Okay, and during practice, often that's what they're doing.
Most people are breathing into the chest by inhibiting the diaphragm, and if you inhibit the diaphragm the whole time, you don't have diaphragmatic strength power. You also don't have good digestive ability, good reproductive function, good immune system function, because the diaphragm is the main controller of the parasympathetic nervous system. So unless your diaphragm is really freely able to breathe the whole way through your practice, you are potentially inhibiting digestive, immune and reproductive function, and you're basically stimulating a sympathetic nervous system response, a fight or fight response. And that fear, anger and aggression that comes with the flight or fight response doesn't sound like yoga to me. Whereas if you're in the parasympathetic nervous system, then that's going to be promoting love and peace and harmony. But to feel parasympathetic response, you must be able to breathe diaphragmatically. And so this is where Pattabhi Jois changed what Krishnamacharya was teaching. He said that when you lift to Lolasana, you do inhale, hold the breath, and then lift up into the air. Whereas what Pattabhi Jois teaches is he says you inhale while lifting up in the air. And the only way you can do that is by contracting the chest and then activating the rectus abdominis and then breathing. And then you can breathe diaphragmatically. But if you try and exhale to the tummy and inhale to the chest while trying to lift into the air, most people can't lift up in the air. And you can see this when you do something like a half sit-up. Because this position here, I'm not sure you can see, this is Lolasana. That's the posture where Pattabhi Jois says, inhale into that posture. But if you inhale to the chest, there's no power. If you inhale to the abdomen with the abdomen soft, there's no power. But if you make this contraction to tighten the abdomen, and you inhale then diaphragmatically, then it's possible to lift up. And you feel power. And the way you can show that to someone, because not everyone can do that posture, is you do a simple version of Lolasana, which is this. So this is what I call a simple version of Lolasana. I do a half sit-up. And you can see it's the same shape as Lolasana. But in the half sit-up, it obliges the rectus abdominis to work. But nothing else has to work. And in this position, this doesn't inhibit the diaphragm. So I can breathe diaphragmatically as I sit up. Everything's relaxed. But if I exhale fully and draw the navel to the spine and keep it firm here, I can't breathe here unless I release the muscles of exhalation. If I try and sit up, it stresses my neck, and if I try and sit up further, the abdomen pushes out. So a person who is trying to hold their abdomen in and breathe either into the abdomen or into the chest will have no power and often neck pain if they do it in a sit-up. You can actually lift up, but it's very stressful. It's much easier to lift up into a sit-up or half or Lolasana if you just simply engage the rectus abdominis and simultaneously inhale diaphragmatically. But the rectus abdominis in this pose and in Lolasana will hold the rib cage down. So it's very difficult to inflate the chest now because the ribs are held in.
You were talking about several postures. Generally in Ashtanga we tend to see the belly tends to be drawn in slightly throughout, which is restricting generally our diaphragmatic breathing.
It can and it can't, yes.
Right, but you were talking earlier about how we can do a similar effect of drawing the belly in using different muscles and allow ourselves to breathe more diaphragmatically.
And if this I can show with your things, it'll be helpful. So this is my relaxed baby abdomen. Now, if I tighten my abdomen with the muscles of abdominal exhalation, that's this, and the abdomen is drawn in. Now, if I tighten my abdomen with the same muscles that we would use to do Lolasana, that's this. It looks the same on the outside, but if I put your fingers into my soft abdomen, this is tightening my abdomen using my exhalation muscles, and then this is using my muscles that one would use for Lolasana, which is the rectus abdominis. And so the muscles of exhalation will draw the abdomen in fully. The muscles of Lolasana, rectus abdominis, push the abdomen out. But relative to a relaxed baby belly, both of them will appear. That's exhalation, that's Lolasana. Both of them appear to draw the abdomen in. But when you draw when you do this one, muscles of exhalation, if I now try and breathe diaphragmatically, I can't. It goes to the chest. Whereas if I use Lolasana, that muscle, now I breathe diaphragmatically, I can breathe fine in my diaphragm. But I have firmness, I have an abdomen that's drawn in, a little bit at least, and I have relaxation and strength.
So if we breathe like this, we can basically increase our diaphragmatic breathing throughout our whole practice, and this is going to affect how our heart rate, it's going to affect the degree to which we are sweating, and our breathing is going to stay regular as well.
Because if you use muscles of abdominal exhalation, it's a little bit like tying a noose around your neck. People die from that, so you don't get blood to the brain. So if you tie a noose around here, you don't get blood to the legs, but the blood needs to come to the legs, so the heart says better pump faster. But if this is expanded, firm but expanded, the heart can easily push blood through without pumping faster.